Now we want to focus on a different story that is on page 5 of the Daily Nation. Chebukati calls for Chiloba's arrest, prosecution over graft. And this is a story that has been developing since Friday last week when the Chief Executive Officer of IEBC was sacked. He communicated his sacking on Friday. And of course now this story is still developing as we get to learn about more details. And the same is focused on page 8 of the Standard, where it is being said that Ezra Chiloba, who was recently dismissed from the Electoral Commission, is facing more trouble after the agency sought to have him prosecuted over alleged loss of 9 billion shillings in last year's election. Of course, both papers talking about that Chebukati, the chairperson of IBC, is blaming Chiloba for having such an expensive election. You remember that the general election was, the budget was about 45 billion shillings, and then the repeat presidential election was 12 billion shillings, a total of 57 billion shillings. And I just want to ask, do you think that finally we have the solution, or we have the person who really caused the country the challenges that we experienced? Do you think that the Commission is on the right track to really getting to the bottom of the problem? We'll start with you.
Yeah, I think this is something that we said for the longest time, but at that particular time the country was so polarized. I think finally the Commission has come to terms with the question of what may have been gross mismanagement and bungling of the elections. I think I myself wouldn't say enough good riddance. I think Chiloba, and speaking about Chiloba, I have no personal issues with him. I'm talking about here the rot at the Secretariat that he was heading, and as head of that Secretariat, the number of key things that we flagged out at the IEBC must go. You remember that period when we went through a lot of tear gas and stuff. One of the key issues that we brought out was a question of procurement. How are equipment procured? How did we manage our infrastructure and the ICT issues? You remember, and this is one of the things we must deal with. After the departure of Chiloba, that's not the end of it. We must look at the Directorate of ICT. We had a lot of rot to the extent that we don't know what result went to the server in France, whether they came back, what were the total number of votes that were transmitted electronically. A lot that needs to be fixed is the work that needs to begin now. Right. But then I also need to point out that beyond this, we now need to move to the conversation. How do we fix the question of the Commission itself? And I'm saying this against the backdrop that we have 3 key issues that are coming. We have the referendum that is coming, and we don't know when it will be. It will probably, in my view, be in 2021. We have the review of boundaries, which in my view will be even more contested than even the referendum itself. And we have a lot of fixing to do with how do we fix the Secretariat and stuff like that. Before we get to that stage, we need to think about how do we fix or amend the laws about their replacement. As it is, there is this vacuum about whether or not these guys resigned, the 4 other commissioners. Did the president receive their resignation? And if so, why hasn't he gazetted? So there is a lot of lacuna here, but if you ask me, I think the departure of Chiloba was long coming, and I can only say good riddance.
Are you convinced?
No, to the last statement that made me smile.
Okay.
I hold no brief for Chiloba. I don't know whether, I mean, of course, there's no possibility of saying that IEBC did the job they were supposed to do last year. But my problem with this, with what I see happening with Chiloba, I get the impression that Chebukati is trying to clean himself. And for me, I to a certain extent agree with my colleague here. IBC just needs to get fixed in totality. There's no way you can convince us that if 9 billion shillings was lost, the only person who was involved in that process was Chiloba. It is actually not possible. You cannot, as chairman, and you see the problem, I get the impression that, I do not know, but I'm not sure whether Chebukati is an executive chairman or not. But when I see him work, he looks like he's one who runs
The Commission.
IBC. So you cannot tell me that 9 billion shillings got lost in your watch, and then you're telling me that the CEO is the one who knows what happened to that money.
One of the reasons why he was fired, according to the commission, is that
Auditor General's report.
he refused to follow directions that were given by the commissioners. Would that be sufficient?
And we're learning about it now.
That's
you see, this is my problem. My problem is, yes, so he refused to follow the instructions. At what point did you discover he refused to follow the instructions? At what point? Because what I am seeing, and this is my problem, what I am seeing now is a very concerted effort by Chebukati to clean himself up of any dirt that could be thrown at IBC and to deflect it to Chiloba. Now, whether or not it is actually justified, I personally have a problem with that particular effort, because it reeks of a person or an individual who is trying to refuse to take responsibility, his own responsibility as chairman of IBC, and say, you know what, things went wrong. Because you cannot say things went wrong when I was chairman of IBC, but it is not my fault, it is his fault.
His fault.
No.
And the question I want to ask you, Chris, is this is not the first time we're seeing a situation like this. There was James Oswago once upon a time, and he's still fighting for his freedom. Of course, he's out
to clean his name
on bail, but he's still fighting to have that that tag lifted. Is it the problem of the office or the office holders who occupy the CEO's office at IBC?
Now, I want to take you to Article 226 of the Constitution when it comes on financial controls. And when you talk of IBC, the CEO is the AIE holder. I want my colleagues also to know that. And commissioners act as a board. And a board, your work is to oversight and to provide supervision and issues of approval. So when it comes to IBC, the buck stops at the CEO. When it comes to matters of procurement, all that is the CEO.
Even
the commission has no business.
But they
when
make
it comes
decisions.
to that. No. Let me explain. You know, when you look at how boards operate, and these are commissions. We have the commissioners there, and when it comes to secretariat, you know, here you have a board where I don't SK Mashare must be the chairman of that board, and you have a CEO. Is it called Wairuru or whatever?
Managing director.
Yeah. So the managing director is the one in charge of the daily operations of the organization, the hiring and the firing of the staff. Issues of procurement is purely to do with the CEO. What the CEO does, he takes it to the commission for approval. And the commission is there to provide direction, to supervise, and to oversight. So what happened here, issues of procurement of BVR, verification kits, all that, which we are told they failed in some areas, it is actually was the responsibility of the CEO. Because the procurement manager, the ICT manager, they report to the CEO. So he's in charge of the daily operations and is accountable to any misappropriation of funds. And when you go to Article 226 of the Constitution, it's clear that any public officer, in one way or another, you gave direction and funds were lost, public funds. You are liable. You must be able to take responsibility.
Right.
So this case of Chiloba, it is coming as a result of an audit which was done by the Auditor General. And the Auditor General's report is the one that informed the sacking. But there's this issue of you must be heard. So we also need to hear.
Wait
yes,
a minute. Was
the
it the Auditor General's report or an internal audit report?
There are two reports here. There's internal auditor's report, and there's also an external report by the Auditor General. Yeah, those are all of, and those are the audit reports we're talking about. And this matter had come to Parliament before. And I remember last time, the Oswago's case, when the commissioners were told to go and Chiloba to go, I was on the front line. At that particular time, when the audit report came, and the Chiloba at that particular time was innocent. So we brought even amendments to amend that if the commissions are to go, let the commissions go, but Chiloba should not be tight. That was as per the last general election. Now, coming to this other one, we're also getting reports. We are being told of misappropriation. So what is there, Chiloba must also be heard. And that's why the chairman, in his wisdom, he said, after this has been done, he forwarded the matter to the DPP. DPP is the one in charge of prosecution, and ESCC, Ethics and Anti-Corruption, is the one to go do investigations. So at a later stage, Chiloba will be called, because you must be heard. So he'll also explain his side of the story, because the misappropriation of 9 billion is so much money. And as my colleague says it here, was it Chiloba alone, or we had other conspiracies that were there. We are told even there were external forces from some ministers, I don't know, in charge of ICT or whoever, I don't know. We've had it in the public domain.
So we need to know. So we cannot go there.
No, but I wanted to weigh in and add this, and also just to agree with him. I agree with the distinction about the Nini, and this was captured actually in the select committee that gave rise to the election amendments of 2016.
Right.
The election amendments at section 35 that amended IEBC section 11 created a distinction and said the commission is responsible for policy, formulation and oversight. The day-to-day running and operations belong to the Secretariat. But you mentioned the responsibility. You know, where does the buck stop? Right. At some point, in terms of hierarchy, I think the commission, the buck stops with the commission. Because they ought to be able to have known, like he's asking, when did they find out? Could they have whistle blown? And I want to draw your attention to the numerous disputes that were taken by Kenyans, Omutata and other people, including NASA itself, about procurement. They went to the the public procurement district tribunal, some went to the High Court, and Chebukati and the commissioner valiantly defended this. So Chebukati himself should be the next one to see the exit door. He cannot now say that he has just discovered. We have court cases that are documented before PPDT, and he cannot come here and tell us that he is not. He was not aware when Chebukati, when Chiloba.
That's actually my problem with this Chiloba. We tend to do something in this country sometimes. We want to give corruption an individual's name. So we'll call it so and so. And he's made a very valid point. We had a lot of judicial
interventions,
conflict towards the last election. And in every one of them, Chebukati would be the one in court with Chiloba defending the IEBC. He has signed personal affidavits confirming that everything was done correctly. So how then does he wake up and say that, by the way, things were not done right, but this is the guy who is at fault? And again, as I said, you see, for example, when the EACC messes up, we don't talk about the CEO. We say we need to revamp the commission. Because, you see, the commission is in charge of policy, it's in charge of giving direction. If we had a very contentious election, we prepared for this election for a long period of time. My assumption, because these guys are paid, they are like permanent employees, these commissioners. My assumption is that they were working literally every day. How then do you come and tell me, after 1 year after the election, close to 1.5 years after some of these things happened, 2 years after they happened, you are now saying we did an internal audit that showed that 1 billion shillings was lost during, because that's where Chebukati has actually filed this in court as an exhibit, explaining why he sent Chiloba on a 3-month compulsory leave. Then you also hear him saying, arrest this man, charge him, prosecute him. And I'm asking myself, boss, what is happening? Because what you do in a situation like this, because at this moment in time, Chebukati is telling us Chiloba is guilty. In fact, he should be in jail. I'm asking myself, at what point was that decision made? You're asking for investigations to be done. You're asking for prosecution to be done. So you're actually saying this guy needs to be taken to a process. Chiloba recently shared some memo he wrote and asked you a series of questions, including when we are doing procurement and commissioners tell us to buy from a certain person, what are we supposed to do as a secretariat? When he asked those questions, and then I would love to know what answers was he given by the commission. Because there's a story here that I think Chebukati is trying very hard to ensure is.
And so the question, to move this conversation forward, how do you ensure legally and all through other avenues that every person who had a fault in that entire process pays for what they did?
I think it is clear, I don't see any conflicts here. When it comes to operations of any commission, I try to explain the way the boards operate. Matters of procurement, whatever the case, daily operations, is just a secretariat. The commission.
What does the commission do every day?
Yeah, let me explain. I'm coming to that so that you explain. You know, there's something.
He has raised an important issue that the commissioners were the ones who were giving instructions.
I was coming to that.
So how do you make commissioners account for what they did?
If you could hold your horses. So when it comes to matters of procurement, it is the responsibility of the secretariat. And for matters of approval, for them to do any procurement, whatever it is, they have done the process, yes, but they must seek approval from the commission. The commission operates like a board. Its work is to provide oversight and to provide policy, to provide policy direction, and also to supervise. So what happens is that the secretariat will do the procurement, will do the hiring and firing, but it must seek approval of the commission. But now that these audit issues have come, and that's why the DPP is coming in. The DPP is there to prosecute, and the DCI should also come in to investigate.
All of them.
Absolutely.
Not just Chiloba.
Of course.
As far as I'm concerned.
If you listen, you'll not be asking that question. It has to be done wholeheartedly. Because for this to have been done, the commission must have done approvals. Because you must seek approvals from the commission. The commission operates like a board. So anything that goes on, the policy direction is at the commission. So if there's rot here, they'll be able to ask, what is the linkage? What is the correlation? Now the secretariat and the board. Then from there, as I said earlier, Chiloba must also be heard. Okay? We'll also be given an opportunity to be heard. This is a matter that will be in court. Right. And in the long run, as I said, Article 226, any public officer, if you are in charge and some funds were lost, you must be held responsible. And what I want to put across, which is important, is about the composition of the IBC. In the IBC Act, as we amended last time, which was very controversial, there's this issue of the selection panel. The president is supposed to put a selection panel in place so that they start interviewing those commissioners. You know, IBC is not like a toilet. You go away for 4 months and you come back, you never resigned. Notwithstanding that. There
was a challenge with the law, because the law, after it was reviewed with the Elections Amendment Act of 2016, it was only providing for how to pick the current commissioners. As of how to pick I was coming
to that.
It may require review.
I was coming to that. So if you could listen. No, I'm taking you step by step. So what is there? What is there is this. As the IBC Act the way it is, it should be amended so that we go the IPPG model. But as we speak now, if there's no law provided for, we'll have to go as per what was existing. Just like the national holidays. When you talk about Moi Day, Moi Day, you didn't repeal the National Holiday Act. That's why when somebody went to court, it was consolidated to have Mashujaa Day, but that law was still existing. So what we are trying to say is this, because you want IBC commissioners to be put in place based on the IPPG model. So until we amend the Elections Act so that we put a law in place that the president should not now go for that selection panel to look for the commissioners. We need the commissioners right now because we are going to review the boundaries. If we're going to review the boundaries, we need a well-constituted commission. If you're going to go for a referendum, we must go with the commission that is well-constituted. So the issue is this, and we are legislators here. We can move an amendment to Elections Act so that we provide for the IPPG model. If not, the president has a responsibility to come up with a selection panel that is going to interview the commissioners so that we can have the commission that is well-constituted.
All right. And finally, for you, because you're
the
only lawyer here, I hope I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, but they're all legislators, I'm sure.
Yes. So my question is, in 2013, all the ills and evils, in quotes, that were done in that election, it is Oswago who has to pay for them and just a few officials from the Secretariat. This time round, so far it's just about Chiloba. Do you think it's possible that every person who was involved, including commissioners who resigned, if they had a mistake, is it possible that they can be followed and to pay for their mistakes?
It is possible. You have seen the former minister, former CS, Wario. Even after exiting and he was posted as an ambassador somewhere, he probably has summons hanging over his head. So definitely the commissioners who resigned, the 4 of them, they're not immune from prosecution, whether they were in office or even after office. The only person who is immune from civil prosecution during the time that he's in office is the president. And even after he exits, he's still capable of being put to prosecution. Now, about the responsibility, I want to tie 2 points that they made. There are questions that Chiloba asked. Those questions lie in minutes that Chiloba of the plenary of the commission. Those minutes ought to be availed because there is a very concerted effort. Yes, Chiloba, I have said it's good riddance, he had to go. But after that, we must find out how deep was the rot. The Secretariat must be overhauled, but this commissioner, starting with Chebukati, he defended, that amounts to perjury. If he filed affidavits where he defended procurement, he can now not tell Kenyans that he's sending away Chiloba because procurement was bungled. Let us have the minutes. Let us have the minutes. Lastly, I want to agree with the model of us having commissioners appointed on the basis of political participants in parliament. It worked with the IPPG, and I want to debunk this idea in our constitution that there is such a thing as independent electoral commissioners. Those people come and they have political inclinations and affiliations and positions. So we need to disabuse ourselves of this notion that there can be such thing as independent commissioners. Let political parties, because this is a political game, let the party that has majority appoint X number of commissioners, and the other ones, if they are parliamentary parties, also be allowed. Lastly, on this question, I think that now that we have 3 commissioners, barring Chebukati himself also being investigated for responsibility, we need to adopt the Judicial Service Commission model where not all commissioners are appointed and exit at the same time. Now that window has availed itself, let us appoint these 4 along the model of IPPG if that goes. If these 3 remain, they should resign or exit before 2022. Let us have another 3 commissioners so that we have continuity and institutional memory in the process.
All right.
I have one point I need to add just to conclude on that issue. First, I disagree strongly with my brother Wamalwa on the issue that the commission played an oversight role. This is a commission that worked full-time. Right now we're talking about these guys who went away for 4 months and say they can't just walk back. Meaning that the commission that was left works every day. So unlike his statement that the board, the commission is working as a board, a board goes in, has a meeting, leaves. These guys work every day.
They report to office. They
report to office every day. So as far as I'm concerned, it is really, I stand, and this is my personal position, I stand very strongly on the basis that there's no way Chebukati is going to walk away from this one and point fingers on only Chiloba. On the IPPG model, yes, the people, the political players do need to have a say, but then we also need to also disabuse ourselves of this feeling that only politicians have a stake in elections in this country. So whatever model we come up with of determining who is going to be in charge of the political parties, of the political competitions of this country, must also remember that the public, who are not political parties, also need to have a stake in how that thing is set up. And because my brother, if Wamala would allow me to finish, him is taking a long time to go to his point. And then when you are speaking, he wants to get into yours.
He's coming to that.
So the point I want to make is this. We do need to come up with a way, and this is why I agree with my brother, we need to come up with a reality that anybody we put in charge of a political process is going to have a political position.
He's asking an important question, because you said that they report to work every other morning. Do you think then we need them to be part-time commissioners, and would that help
when we do sit down and look at, and that's why I'm saying when we need to look at IEBC holistically, this attempt by Chebukati to make it look like the IEBC problem is personal to Chiloba, and now that he's out, we are fine, is what I have a problem with.
Okay.
We need to look at it holistically. We need to look at how we set up the commissions, but then, and we also need to understand the reality of our political parties. If we agree now the political parties we have in parliament are the ones that determine, and then they change by 2022, what happens? So we need to take the realities of our politics into
I think
consideration.
I need to clarify so that
half a minute
so that my
I'm
brother
sure
understands.
He will not take half a minute,
at times Wambugu is slow in catching up. I want him to look at State Corporation Act, and what I said, the model, the way the boards work with the secretariat, the board is there to provide oversight, policy formulation, and supervision. So it does not mean
the commission. We're talking about the commission.
Yeah, the commission. That's how it works. So I gave you a simplistic model so that for your easier
so
understanding.
Thank you.
At times you take too long to understand. I was making it simple. Now he has understood. Absolutely. Look at the state agency theory, State Corporation Act.
Dr. Chris Omalo, let's move on.